Hello and welcome along to match day 31 of Championship predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. We are back with a full weekend fixture list as we head for 3 games in a week over the next 7 days. Lots of predictions to come, and we'll start with a quick recap of what's happened over the last week. We've got last weekend's predictions to catch up on first, and then the midweek game too. But if we go back to match day 30, as you can see on screen now, I did manage to win the match day. I beat everyone in the comments, a very rare feat. 9 points in total, including 2 perfect scores. And those were for the Championship's favourite scoreline, a 1-1 draw between Huddersfield and QPR, and a 1-0 win for Hull City against Cardiff, which, fair play, a few of you predicted down in the comments too. Other perfect outcomes were Middlesbrough, Blackpool, Reading, Watford, and West Brom v Coventry. And 9 points for me is a winner on the match day. So a pat on the back for myself for once. In midweek, not quite so much. If we move on to Blackpool v Huddersfield, none of us predicted a draw. It's 0 points all round, and I think the less said about that, the better. Let's move on to match day 31. And of course, we begin with a Friday night Sky game, which will mean only one thing. Of course, we're heading over to the West Midlands. It is Birmingham City versus West Bromwich Albion. Both sides got fantastic victories last weekend. Very different circumstances, I think you'd say that. West Brom with another 1-0 win, this time at home to Coventry. Back into the playoffs, continue their brilliant form under Corberan. Just the Burnley game, a blip in the road, out the FA Cup now, but back in style with that win against Coventry. They were really solid, let's be fair. They've looked brilliant defensively under Corberan, which is very good given what had happened earlier in the season for them. Only 1 shot on target against. They were the better side. They dominated the ball, they dominated the chances. In the end, only 1 goal. Maybe that's a slight concern. They've not been scoring as freely in recent weeks, but they still look a very good team. And West Brom are flying under their new manager. For Birmingham City, on the other hand, it was a crucial win at a crucial time. And yes, there was a little bit of luck involved in terms of Swansea losing their star centre-half and going down to 10 at 3-2. They made all their subs and then picked up an injury, or all of their sub breaks, I should say. But then Birmingham, fair play, they took advantage. Set pieces in the 90th and 97th minute to win the game. A 4-3 victory at Swansea City. But I don't think they'll want to be relying on scoring 4 to win games too often. As we mentioned though last time out, we asked if they were getting dragged into a relegation battle, and that is a crucial time to respond and say no, we're not. So you've got to give credit on that front. Good to see goals flowing in. Chong looked a threat on the counter, obviously scored the penalty as well. And although it wasn't a vintage defensive performance, it was an even game. They gave up possession and they hit Swansea hard on the counter, which a lot of teams have done to good effect in the past. So a really tough game to predict this on Friday night, but it is very hard to back against West Brom at the minute. I know their 1 or 2 off days under Corberan have been away from home, but they're such a goal scoring threat. They're such a good side. And Birmingham at home, well, let's be honest, they're not great. They've actually picked up more points on the road. So I'm going to go for West Brom to nick it. I know Friday night games aren't normally great, but I think there'll be a goal or 2 in this one. I'm going to go 2-1 to the visitors, the Baggies, to nick the game between the 2 West Midlands teams. Let's move on to Saturday, and all the remaining 11 games are 3 PM kickoffs, so good for the neutral football fan. But we start with a massive 6-pointer at the bottom. It's Blackpool versus Rotherham United. Blackpool second bottom on 27 points, Rotherham in 20th place on 32 points. 2 defences that have let in 40 goals this season, but Rotherham, to be fair to them, 2 really hard-fought draws in their last 2 games. We talked about how well they did at Watford in the 1-1 draw. What an effort against Sheffield United too. To keep a clean sheet, to be able to stay stern against the second best attacking outlet in the league, it's a really good effort. And it's bonus points. They wouldn't have expected results in those sorts of games. This one, much more expectation. You've got to get points against those rivals, stop them closing the gap. And you've got to be fair to Mick McCarthy's side too. Thoroughly beaten at Borough, but everyone is at the moment. Against Huddersfield at 1-0 down, and then with that red card just before half-time, I think most of us probably thought that was an away win wrapped up. But it wasn't to be. To score 2 goals with 10 men, to come back from behind twice, it is a stunning effort and just shows the spirit under McCarthy. He's definitely got them playing for him. The crowd helped out late on in that game as well. And Blackpool, to be fair, as much as they wouldn't have liked that result at the start of the night, they'll probably be quite happy with it at the end of it. So a crucial point on the board for them, still only 2 from safety. Are we going to get the Mick McCarthy bounce? It's still very hard to judge on that game. I Can just see this being one of those gritty 1-0s either way. I'm not sure which way to go for it. I'm sure it'll be a high-scoring thriller now, but I am going to back the Mick McCarthy bounce. There were encouraging signs with 10 men in that second half. I'm going to go for 1-0 to Blackpool. Sorry, Rotherham fans. Let's move on to Bristol City versus Norwich. That is the next of the 3 p.m. kickoffs. Very contrasting days for them last weekend. Bristol City got a brilliant smash and grab 2-1 win at Preston in a game where they had far less chances, but they hit on the counter, they scored good goals. They made some good signings at the end of the window to replace Semenyo in particular, Harry Cornick from Luton being one of course. And Norwich, well, they've been great under Wagner so far. They've had a huge goal scoring threat, not against Burnley. The league leader's just too good, but then who isn't losing to Burnley at the minute? A 3-0 defeat, maybe some concerns. For Norwich, as we mentioned last time out, they've been so good away from home under David Wagner. And you just feel like when they've got space at the back, Bristol City try and play out. They play a slightly higher line at times. You just feel on the counter they're going to get chances. So for me, this is guaranteed to be a goal-scoring game. There's going to be goals and action at both ends of the pitch. I feel like it's going to be one of the entertainers of the weekend. Bristol City are a mixed bag at home. Norwich are better on the road. They win most of their games. And they are one of the top scorers in the division away from home too. So I'm going to go for a Norwich win. Bristol City have been brilliant recently, unbeaten in a long time. We've seen before, that run doesn't last forever. So I'm going to make sure that I don't get caught out. Norwich City to win away at Ashton Gate. I'm going to go, I think 3-1. I'm going to go quite big in this one. Let's move on to the league leaders, who of course did beat Norwich City last weekend. It's Burnley who played Preston North End. So the two sides that the teams in the last game faced last weekend are going head-to-head in this one. Preston, of course, lost that game against Bristol City after their big cup defeat against Spurs. And Burnley, well, they won their FA Cup replay in midweek. They won against Norwich last weekend. They're just not losing games, are they? It took till the 94th minute in midweek, but they managed to get the job done. And they've got such a strong squad now after that January improvement that they can make 6, 7, 8 changes and it's barely noticeable. With such a strong squad, you don't want to back against them. I thought the new manager bounces of West Brom and Norwich might be enough to nick a point. Almost was in the West Brom case in fairness. And I also thought that Preston being away from home, where they've won 8 of their 14 games, they're 1 point off the top of the division in the away table. I thought this might be a threatening game for them. But Burnley are the best at home. They're unbeaten at home. They've won 11, drawn 4, scored 32 goals. They are almost the invincible force there. So I can't back against them to win. I'm going to go for them to nick this game. I just feel Preston are in a slight downturn of form now. They were beaten 4-0 by Norwich, 3-0 by Spurs. And although they nicked that win at Birmingham, the Bristol City game was worrying. So despite knowing they're a lot better away from home, I have to back Burnley to nick it. I'm not going to go for a thriller. I don't think it's going to be exciting. I'm going to go 2-1 or 1-0. 2-1 to Burnley. Let's go for goals this weekend. We want thrillers. Next up, we move on to a game which is big at both ends of the table as Cardiff face Middlesbrough at the Cardiff City Stadium. Cardiff are becoming 1-0 defeat specialists at the moment against Millwall, Luton and Hull City, the same outcome. For Middlesbrough, bar when they play against the odd top side and with the red card against Sunderland, they just look invincible. They won 3-0 against Blackpool, 2-0 against Watford. They look so comfortable. But away from home, they're not quite so good. The one thing I will say for them is they very rarely draw, just one away from home all year. They either win or lose. Cardiff City at home have been poor, but then they haven't been any better away from home. It's just whether Sabri Lamucci can find that attacking threat. Cardiff have not been that bad defensively this season. They haven't conceded a huge number of goals, but they just don't take chances. And when we saw them against Luton the other week, they didn't create a huge amount, albeit probably more than Stoke the week after. But against sides like Hull City, you've probably got to pick up points, albeit Hull are looking well up the table now. So I do worry for them. When they have won at home this season, it's generally been by 1-0. But are they going to be able to keep Middlesbrough out? I mean, barring a red card, I don't think anyone can at the minute. So I'm going to go for Michael Carrick's side to win and win pretty convincingly. Maybe not as many goals as they often get because Cardiff aren't the worst at the back. But I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to win this 2-0. And if there's no attacking intent from Cardiff soon, I do worry they'll end up in that bottom 3 because the sides below starting to look a little bit better now. Time to head back to the Midlands as we go to Coventry City versus Luton Town. Coventry 1-0 defeat against West Brom last week, but again, West Brom have been beating most sides. At home, Coventry were better against Huddersfield the week before, albeit they struggled against the top side in Norwich prior to that. Luton Town, very hard to predict. Two good 1-0 home wins in the league, but then a shocking performance at Grimsby in midweek. Yes, there was a bit of rotation, but a few of the stars still in the team. And in the second half, they were huffing and puffing, but you can't give a 3-goal head start to anyone. So Coventry, maybe at home you would fancy them to do well. They still have won 7 of their home games. They've got a pretty good record at home. For Luton Town, 4th best on the road. 8 wins from 14, 2 points off the top of the league table there, and very rarely letting more than 1 goal on the road. This one for me is a tricky one to predict, and as a result, I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm going to turn up with the Championship's favourite scoreline for the first time. It's almost always guaranteed a perfect score at some point, so let's hope it's this game. Coventry City 1, Luton Town 1. I'm happy to be wrong, by the way, if Luton want to get the 3 points. Next up, we go to London. It is QPR versus Millwall. Big game this. Millwall still chasing the playoffs. They drew 1-1 at home to Sunderland last weekend. Not a bad result for them in truth. Sunderland have had a good year and have been very good away from home. And QPR still can't get that win. A draw away at Huddersfield, 1-1. And again against a side in a relegation mix. They've got to be a little bit worried. I know they're 11 points clear at the moment, but they've played an extra game and they haven't won in a long, long time. The fact that they've not been able to keep a clean sheet either. The 3-0 at Hull was a really poor display. And I just don't see the Neil Critchley effect on this team. It doesn't look like his team. And given how they played in the first game, it's a real worry to have seen them almost regress a little bit since then. Great to see Jamal Lowe scoring regularly. He is a threat for them on the counter-attack without doubt. But I've not been that impressed by them at the moment. Millwall are a stern side, but they are much poorer away from home. Only 4 wins on the road all season, one of the worst 7 or 8 teams in the league. QPR at home, very similar record. It is going to be a tricky one, this. And I'm going to have to do it, and I'll apologise in advance. I'm going back-to-back with the Championship's favourite scoreline. One of them's got to come off. Of course, I got one with QPR last weekend. I'm going to go 1-1 again because it looks like the most likely QPR result virtually every week at the minute. On to a side that, as I'm recording this, I watched last night in FA Cup replay action. It's Sheffield United against Swansea City. Swansea, well, the less said the better about their defending. I know they had a bit of poor luck. They made their 3 subs, then a big centre-half gets injured, then they let in 2 set pieces. Of course, that's tricky, but you look at Swansea, the way it's being run, and I was quite interested after, actually. From a tactical point of view, I thought there might be some stick for Russell Martin, but the fans were right behind him. You've got to give Swansea fans credit for that. A lot of the frustration at the moment definitely been aimed at the boardroom for losing Obafemi, for then not securing Carlin Grant as a replacement. And of course, in a championship, those fine margins can be the difference between what is 5 points above them in the playoffs and where they are in mid-table. So a very difficult one for Russell Martin to take. My only worry from that is his post-match press conference. I don't think I've seen him look so dejected in his whole managerial career. He looked like he wasn't far from the brink, and I do wonder if he doesn't get a reaction soon, whether he might walk away. I hope not, but there was some real worrying signs from that press conference. He wasn't happy at all. Sheffield United, on the other hand, back-to-back draws against Wrexham in the Cup, and then Rotherham, of course, in the league last weekend. Bit of a frustrating one where they couldn't break them down. But prior to that, they'd been winning games regularly. Then, of course, they won their replay late in midweek. They had a little bit of a let-off. A second penalty was missed by Wrexham, and then they scored 2 in stoppage time after a few injuries for the away side. But other than that, they've been in great form. And again, just like Burnley, they don't look like losing. But they've got to be a little bit careful now. The gap to them and Borough is 10 points. Borough we've predicted to win already this weekend. If they do, and Sheffield United slip up, it could be a little bit tricky. As it is, I'm going to go for the home side to nick it. A threat from set pieces. I'm sure Swansea will struggle again. So I'm going to go, certainly not for a Swansea clean sheet. I'm going to go 2-1 Sheffield United. Well, on to another side that are now looking over their shoulder again. It's Stoke City versus Hull City. Back-to-back wins for the visitors. Hull, they are up to 12th place, just 4 points off the playoffs. And I know I say it every week. Liam Rossini has done such a good job. It's a good Hull City side, and maybe he's benefited a little bit, the timing of players coming back from injury and the quality of the squad. But he's made them so much better defensively. Not just 2 wins in a row, but 2 clean sheets in a row too. And at home to sides that you would expect them to beat, they've generally done very well against. However, away from home, they've been a bit of a mixed bag this year. Stoke City are becoming very hard to predict. They were brilliant against Reading in a 4-0 win. They were comfortable when they won 3-1 against Stevenage in the Cup. And in away at Luton last week, I watched them at Kenilworth Road and I was so disappointed and underwhelmed. They had a few set pieces that they tried to fling onto the keeper's head, but from open play, I would argue, and I mean this genuinely, I don't think I've seen a less threatening side at Kenilworth Road all year, and Luton haven't been great at home this season. So I was a little bit disappointed from Stoke in that sense. I know it was a slight change at the back, Harry Souttar coming out. They looked a little bit legless, and I would imagine that Twanzebe will come back in there quite quick. But for Stoke at home, they have been better in recent weeks, albeit they've still got the 4th worst record in the league at home. I don't know what to go for with this one. There's something about it that tells me there's going to be a winner, but I have no idea who for. I'm tempted to go for Hull City, but then away from home, against Sheffield United, they struggled a bit. Against Wigan, they were really good. I'm going 1-0 to the visitors, and well done to Liam Rosenior. He's doing a cracking job. Well, we head up to the northeast next because Sunderland are hosting Reading, and it is a pretty big game for both. Reading are really starting to slide. Their defensive record is collapsing. They've now, I know Manchester United's in that, but the last 3 league games they've let in 8 goals. Albeit they played against Watford last time out and will probably be very happy to have got a draw. Coming back from 2-0 down, a cracking effort. And again, showed a little bit of experience, showed a little quality. But when you consider the defeat against Stoke, it is a big worry away from home. Reading have only won 3 away games all season. They're in the relegation zone on the away form only. And Sunderland, been a little bit of a mixed bag and surprisingly perhaps not been as good at home. I know they've struggled to break teams down who sit a little deeper. I would expect Reading to do just that. And of course, they've had the double injury whammy this season with Ross Stewart. Ellis Sims being recalled. They're reliant on a pretty new front line now. Amad Diallo's in the form of his life. You've got the likes of Joe Gelhardt who's come into the team. Patrick Roberts, Jack Clark, all really threatening attacking players. But are they the ones that are going to unlock a deep defensive line? I'm not so sure about that. It might be a tricky one for them. I kind of want to go for a draw here. And I could see it being a frustrating game for the hosts. And I almost want to go for 0-0, even though Sunderland have scored in all of their last 6. Reading are letting in goals galore. You just feel like this could be one of these weird games. I have no doubt that it could be 2-2, 3-3 or 3-2 either way. But I'm going to go on a hunch here. I've got nothing to back it up on the stats. I'm going for 0-0 at the Stadium of Light. Again, apologies to anyone there watching. 2 to go. Let's go to Vicarage Road because it is Watford versus Blackburn Rovers. And Blackburn, well, it's the old London buses phrase, isn't it? Didn't draw for 28 league games, then 2 come along at once. They stay in the playoff mix, but failed to score at home to Wigan. Maybe the new manager bounce had an impact there, because Wigan were a lot more organised. I'm sure they would have beaten them under Kolo Touré. But at the moment, just not quite firing for them. They drew in the cup as well, albeit winning a replay, and got battered at Rotherham. So in the last 4 or 5 games, not too many positive signs from Blackburn Rovers. For Watford, another disappointing day, a 2-2 draw at Reading. It looked pretty comfortable just after half-time when Porteous headed in the second. But again, defensive frailties. It doesn't matter what defenders are out, there are still the same issues at the back. And that is 3 without a win in the league now. The Rotherham and Reading ones will be disappointing for sure. Blackburn away have been pretty awful. Of course, it was their first away draw in their last away game at Bristol City. Watford are starting to get players back. They've got defenders in who will get more cohesive each time. And as a result, I'm going to go for them to nick it. I know I've gone for this score a few times this week. I was going to say 2-1 to the hosts. I don't think it'll be that good. I'm turning down the goals at the end. 1-0 to Watford. We finish matchday 31 with a huge relegation 6-pointer. It is Wigan Athletic, who are bottom of the league, versus Huddersfield in 22nd. The winner, remarkably, could come out of the relegation zone, albeit Wigan would need a vast goal swing to do that. But neither of them have won in their last 6 matches in all competitions. Wigan, much better defensively. Their first clean sheet on Monday night against Blackburn since they played Blackburn back in October. A really crucial defensive effort. Gave up 1 brilliant chance, but otherwise, they were really solid at the back. The problem now is, can they go and find that attacking threat to go with it? Because the position they're in at the moment, draws aren't going to be enough every week. Especially against a side like Huddersfield, who are very vulnerable at the back, who really disappointed on Tuesday night, to be honest. 1-0 up against 10 men. You would expect a team to go on and win that game. They gave up an equaliser, fought to get themselves in the lead again, and still managed to give it away. I would argue Blackpool had as many good chances, if not more. It was a really, really disappointing display, and it's the same old issues for Huddersfield on the road. Only 2 wins away all season, and actually, this is the worst home team versus the worst away team in the league. Between them, in the respective tables, they've picked up 19 points between them in 29 games. This is going to be really tricky. I can't see many goals from Wigan. I can see them playing to be defensive and maybe nick a 1-0. Will Huddersfield be a threat from set pieces? They do generally score a goal as well. Everything about it wants me to go for a Championship's favourite scoreline. But I'm going to go for Sean Maloney to get a big crowd in, to get a bit of an impact from these lads. And because Huddersfield are so shaky at the back, I'm going to go 2-1 to Wigan Athletic to finish. Another home win by 2-1. Let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for matchday 31 in a championship then. 2 of the big 6-pointers at the bottom, I've gone for the home side to win both in Blackpool and Wigan. That would certainly make the relegation scrap interesting. I've also gone for a comfortable Norwich win at informed Bristol City, and both Burnley and Sheffield United to continue keeping the pace at the top of the table. But those are just my predictions. Do you agree with them or disagree? Let me know down in the comments section and give us your predictions for matchday 31. If you beat my score, of course, you will get a shout out in the next recap in Sunday's episode ahead of the full midweek fixture list. If you did enjoy this episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. Check out my FM23 channel up in the eye above too. And I'll see you back here on Sunday afternoon as we get ready for another midweek of Championship action.